The first thing Eleanor Hayes noticed was the smell. It clung to her clothes before the knock even came, an unmistakable mix of rain-soaked cardboard, old plastic, and the bitter sting of city garbage. She stood in the marble hallway of her suburban home, hesitating, one manicured hand hovering over the brass doorknob. Whoever was on the other side did not belong in this world of polished floors, scented candles, and framed family portraits. Yet the knock came again, softer this time, almost apologetic. When Eleanor finally opened the door, she was met by a woman bent slightly forward, wrapped in an oversized municipal jacket, her gray hair tucked messily under a knit cap. A garbage cart rested beside her, its wheels squeaking faintly. The woman's eyes were tired but alert, scanning the doorway as if she expected to be chased away at any moment. "Sorry to bother you, ma'am," the woman said, voice rough but gentle. "Trash pickup's late today. I thought I'd check if you needed anything extra taken." Eleanor's instinctive reaction rose like a reflex she had spent years cultivating. Annoyance, then dismissal. This neighborhood had rules, schedules, boundaries. She opened her mouth to say no, already stepping back to avoid the smell drifting inside. But something stopped her. Perhaps it was the way the woman avoided eye contact, or the way her hands trembled slightly as she held the cart's handle, or maybe it was the faint memory of who Eleanor had once been, before wealth made her forget how close the world really was. "Yes," Eleanor said instead. "Actually, yes. Come around back." The woman blinked in surprise, then nodded, gratitude flickering briefly across her face. What Eleanor did not know was that the woman standing at her door was not a garbage collector at all. She was, in fact, her father-in-law. Arthur Hayes had built his fortune from nothing. The son of a factory janitor, he learned early how invisible people could become when society decided they were disposable. By 68, he was a self-made millionaire with businesses across 3 states, known in boardrooms for his sharp instincts and in charity circles for his quiet generosity. But at home, Arthur carried a heavier concern than markets or mergers. His son Daniel had married Eleanor 3 years ago. On paper, she was perfect, educated, articulate, impeccably dressed. She hosted charity luncheons and posted smiling photos online about gratitude and blessings. Yet something in her eyes during family dinners unsettled Arthur. It wasn't cruelty he saw, but distance, a kind of selective kindness that appeared only when it was convenient, visible, or rewarded. Arthur didn't want rumors. He didn't want second-hand judgments. He wanted truth. So he borrowed a city sanitation uniform from a retired friend, applied makeup to age his face, slipped on a wig, and became Eleanor, a garbage-collecting woman no one would look twice at. No one except his daughter-in-law. Around the back of the house, Eleanor opened the gate and gestured toward the bins. "They're heavier than usual," she said, apologetic now. "I didn't realize we'd missed pickup." "That's all right," Arthur replied, hoisting the lid with practiced effort. He moved slowly, deliberately, testing not just Eleanor's patience but her presence. Many people disappeared once the work began. Eleanor did not. She stood nearby, arms crossed against the cold, watching. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she stepped forward. "You don't have to lift that alone," she said, surprising herself as much as Arthur. She grabbed one side of the bin, her expensive sweater brushing against grime. Arthur felt something tighten in his chest. As they worked, Eleanor began to talk, at first about the weather, then about the neighborhood, and finally, without warning, about her life. "I didn't grow up like this," she said quietly. "Everyone thinks I did, but we were barely getting by. I promised myself I'd never feel that powerless again." Arthur listened, saying nothing. "It's strange," she continued. "You get everything you thought you wanted, and still, you feel like you're failing at something important." Arthur glanced at her then, really looked at her. The woman before him was not shallow. She was guarded, afraid. When the bins were emptied, Eleanor disappeared inside and returned with a bottle of water and a folded sandwich. "For later," she said, pressing it into Arthur's gloved hands. "I know it's probably not much." Arthur accepted it carefully, as though it were something precious. "It's more than enough," he said. As he walked away, pushing the cart down the pristine street, Arthur felt the first crack in his certainty. This was not the cold indifference he expected, but the test was not over. The following weeks, Arthur returned again and again, sometimes early, sometimes late, sometimes when the weather was unforgiving. He watched how Eleanor reacted when she thought no one important was watching. She brought coffee on cold mornings. She asked about his health. Once she noticed his shoes were worn and quietly left a pair of new work boots by the bins, pretending she didn't know who they were for. But then came the day that changed everything. Arthur arrived to find Eleanor sitting on the back steps, her face pale, eyes red. She looked up, startled, then embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to." "You don't have to explain," Arthur said gently. She hesitated, then let the words spill out. Daniel's company was struggling. They might lose the house. She hadn't told anyone, not her friends, not her social circle, not even her husband. She was terrified of being seen as weak again. Arthur sat beside her, the cold concrete seeping through his uniform. "You know," he said softly, "strength isn't about never falling. It's about who you're willing to be when you do." Eleanor laughed bitterly. "Easy to say." "Is it?" Arthur asked. "I clean garbage for a living. People look through me every day. But some days, someone sees me, and that's enough to keep going." Eleanor turned to him, eyes glistening.